Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our presentation this evening. When it comes to college, the best advice I can always give everyone to start off with is just to start preparing and getting organized early. So it just makes me so happy that you're all using this time to focus on preparing for applying to college with great first steps like attending this webinar to make sure you're on track. So my name is Michaela, and I'm lucky enough to be one of the counselors at Moon Prep, along with Lindsey here. I was previously an admissions counselor at a Big Ten university, so I've been right in the seat reading applications of students that were prepared for their college application and also students that were not prepared for their college applications. So tonight we're going to be kind of creating a checklist of areas that you can focus on right now to be prepared for a variety of grades and just give yourself the best chance of admission at your top colleges. Now, tonight we have people joining this webinar with a wide variety of college plans. Some of you might be wanting to apply to Ivy League schools or BSMD accelerated medical programs, like direct medical programs, or you might be applying to a few in-state colleges. And this advice is going to be universal across the board for everyone.
Oh, perfect. I'm sorry. So my name is Lindsey, and I'm also a counselor at Moon Prep. And so I've worked as an SAT tutor, as a writing coach as well. And I really enjoy working with students, one-on-one throughout the entire process, ultimately helping them get their BSMD, their top tier goals, whatever they might be. And so we're really excited for you all to be here and joining us on this webinar. If you haven't done so already, you can hit subscribe so you can see more of our really great videos we have. We have some reviews from students. We have a lot of interviews with admissions officers and competitive summer camps. So feel free to check out our other things on our channel and start sending in your questions as well, because that's what we're here to do as well. Make sure that it's as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions about college admissions, just let us know, and we'll definitely help you throughout that process too.
Yeah, we'll be answering questions throughout as you send them in, and then we'll have a larger Q&A at the end of this webinar. And, answering questions is really what we're all about. At Moon Prep, we're spending all of our time answering questions from families. We're working one-on-one, never in a class scenario. We're really catering to the individual needs of our families. Oftentimes answering emails at 10 p.m. We really work around your schedule and your time zone just to meet your needs and answer questions and help you kind of create the best path to your educational goals. We're just helping guide you there and helping you put your best foot forward on all of your college applications. And we also work remotely. So again, we can accommodate those different time zones and just requests kind of over weekends, everything like that. So we want to kind of get into it today. And for our webinar guests, we have a special that we designed just for you. And we have a lot of advice to give you today. It's going to cover everything from building a college list to kind of how to build a resume while you're still in quarantine and there's remote options. So if there's really anything that you want our personalized advice over, even looking at your class schedule to see what classes you're signing up for at high school and seeing if they match up with your future major, or if you want help building a college list, we designed a 1-hour one-on-one college advice session just for you. So this is something that you can sign up for outside of one of our regular packages, and all you have to do is just mention this webinar and we can sign you up to talk to one of us or another counselor on our team as well. So that is just something to keep in mind. We'll mention it again at the end of the webinar, but we will get right into our advice.
Perfect. So I know it seems a little bit early for like our juniors, but this is just good advice for anyone who's starting to approach the college admissions process, because I think one of the big things that students have to think about and think about early as well, because these are big decisions, is just understanding the different application routes that are available to you. So a lot of selective colleges like Vanderbilt, Duke, they'll have early application deadlines. So it is really important to pay close attention to which decisions are binding, which ones are less restrictive. Those binding ones are called early decision. They do help your application a little bit. A lot of the times, like for example, Duke University in previous years, I'm not sure about this past cycle, but in previous years, their overall acceptance rate would be about 4%, but for early decision, it'd be about 20%. So it does give you a significant boost. Still really competitive, get into these types of schools, but if you have a decent, if you're fitting kind of the profile of the school, it might be a good chance for you to get into a school through that kind of route. There's also early action deadlines. And these schools will essentially just have a published date that students can, submit their decision by, and then they'll also usually get their decision by a certain date. It's a little bit earlier than, the regular decision, which gives you an advantage. A lot of state universities will have like early scholarship or honors deadlines. And so that's why a lot of our students, we do really recommend that they go for the early action deadline. So they are hitting any scholarship, honors college deadlines. They're not missing anything by going for that regular decision deadline, because that might be in spring. And then you might even see something that's called rolling admissions. For rolling admissions, usually you find out a lot quicker, which can be a huge advantage. I think Michaela even had a student find out in, August last year or something like that. One school, she applied to August. It was her dream school. That's all she wanted to do. She got in, and then she was done. So, that would be the dream for a lot of students. And that's what happened for her. So you usually found it really quick. And if you apply early, like Michaela's student did, you have a better chance of getting in. There's more seats available. And so that can be a strategy. So obviously she didn't start her application in August. She started way in advance. We're actually working with our students right now on their college applications. So starting to think about all these types of things. And so if you are a junior, now is really the time to start thinking about it. And Michaela is going to go into great detail later on about really what steps you can take to prepare for college, no matter what grade you're in. Now, lastly, regular decision. It's kind of a popular choice because some students aren't as good as Michaela's student and have their applications ready to go by August, and that's okay. Those deadlines typically are in January or so. And it's a popular choice because it gives you a little bit more time. Maybe if you didn't get your Common App done or your supplementals done, or if you applied to your early decision school and you didn't get in, so this is kind of like your next round of applications. However, we really do believe that with enough planning, you really can apply at least early to almost every school on your list, as long as we're kind of being careful about binding early decision deadlines. And so we'll kind of talk about that, more in detail. And if you guys have any questions about like what the rules are specifically for any of these applications, just let us know in the comment section, and we can help you out with that too. Now, here's kind of the timeline. And so we're approaching April really quickly. And so this is right around the corner. And so many schools, like I said, will offer that early action deadline. Some of them are as early as October. And like I said, you find out typically a little bit earlier. So that can be really a big advantage. A lot of our BSMD students, those are those direct med students, those deadlines typically are like November 1st, November 15th. You'll see some December and January deadlines sprinkled in there, but that seems to be the majority of the deadlines. And a lot of early action deadlines are in that school too. So we have a really big push with our students in that October month, trying to get everything in play. But, if you want to be super on top of it, there's no reason why you can't start working on your applications, honestly, today. Now, for our regular decision students, and those are like our seniors, for example, this year, if they applied in January, a lot of them still haven't heard back. Ivy Leagues haven't released their decisions yet. They're not going to know for a couple more weeks. A lot of really competitive schools, wait until the first week of April. So that can be really hectic because by May 1st is traditionally May 1st is when you have to decide. I saw a lot of schools this year going for the May 3rd deadline. And that can be a little bit hectic. You only have 3-ish weeks to really decide on where you want to go to school, where you might be, ending up in 3 more months, packing your bags and studying. So this can be really stressful, but we really do try and work with our students to make sure that they are applying those early action decisions, they can have as many options as possible beforehand so that they can have those decisions ready to go. It's not a stressful waiting and waiting and waiting. Yeah, that's kind of our strategy of applying early. It's always smart to think about this, even if it seems super far in advance.
Mm-hmm. And for most of our rising seniors, most components of their college application are obviously already set in stone, like your transcripts and the courses that you've taken, and developing relationships with your teachers for great recommendation letters. And you've also probably likely learned or earned the GPA at the end of your junior year that you're applying to colleges with. That's what you'll use to apply to colleges with. So the first thing to focus on when planning to apply to college applications is finalizing that college list, because this will affect your other steps later. This is where rising seniors should definitely start right now. So current juniors, this is where you should start. But it's also a step that underclassmen can start as early as possible. Like I have my sophomores working on this right now. This is the foundation for everything, is really that college list. This just means you're going to be researching the schools that you might want to attend and adding their information into a spreadsheet so that you know that you've done your research, like making sure your GPA and test scores are kind of a match for that school and their admissions requirements. And the reason it's a good idea for this step to be done by underclassmen too is that some majors, like engineering, at some colleges can require certain classes. So creating a college list as, say, a sophomore or a freshman, if you create this college list that early, then you're allowed to kind of plan your classes in high school to make sure you're taking calculus and you're on track for that major that might be required for that major, when maybe your high school's graduation track may have you taking different classes. So a really good college spreadsheet should keep track of like priority deadlines for those colleges, acceptance rates, average ACT and SAT scores and GPA numbers to help you determine if a school is a reach, a match, or a safety school. So just kind of knowing all those numbers helps you determine your chances at admission. So a reach school is a school that has requirements higher than what you are offering, what you have. And then a match school is a school that has requirements that are basically equal to what you're offering. And then a safety school is a school that has requirements are below what you have. So you feel like you definitely should receive an acceptance letter there. So I would make sure, at the very least, for students that are wanting to stay like in state, make sure you have at least like 3 schools in each category. And if you're applying to Ivy League schools or direct medical schools like BSMD programs, your list will be much larger, sometimes with 7 to 10 schools in each of those same categories again. Well, I guess you don't have to have 10 schools in your safeties, but you'll have more schools to apply to. So kind of our next action slides are going to be, our next action steps are going to be the things you can kind of get off your list early. And again, some of these things can be handled when you're a sophomore as well. I know students that have started studying for the SAT or ACT all the way in sophomore year. And I know that, COVID has really derailed everyone's plans for taking tests. Like I feel like there's kind of a bottleneck of people that couldn't take it, and there's still kind of strange test dates, things are still happening there. So colleges in the future, we're going to see how they're reacting to this moving forward, how many of them stay test optional and things like that. But, the best thing to do is just to know to be prepared in advance in case you have less test dates to get the test scores that you want. Mm-hmm. So just make sure that you kind of over prepare for the test dates that you're able to attend, and just know in advance that you'll be kind of maybe studying a little bit more than a typical year of students would, just kind of study more for those so that you can get their score right the first time, basically. And then otherwise, Next, we really want you to kind of focus also, and again, this can start in sophomore year, of really kind of connecting with teachers. It's important to remember that you will need to ask teachers, coaches, outside recommenders, and school counselors potentially for a letter of recommendation going into your senior year. So just make sure that when you're kind of thinking about who to ask, make sure that it's a teacher that that knows you well and recently, like not a teacher from middle school or ninth grade, and also give them plenty of time and also give them a copy of your resume. It's also helpful to put together a questionnaire sheet so they can get to know you better. Like you can like put questions on there that say like, what's your intended major and why did you choose this field? And then kind of answer it out so that they can kind of get to know you, like they know you in class, but they can get to know you and your interests and passions a little bit. And then like, how did their class play a role in that decision? This would like remind them of any relevant projects that they could speak to in that letter. So if you are a current junior, this is something, that questionnaire and that resume of activities are two things that you can be compiling right now so that you can give them to your teacher way before they go off on on their summer plans. They can, if you're planning to ask someone from your junior year, you can compile all that information now and give it to them way early, and then they'll be fresh when they're writing your letter of recommendation. They won't have already written 100 of them, and so your letter will probably read a lot better. And then also, you have some virtual steps you can be taking, especially if you are a junior right now. This is where you should be spending a lot of your time, but also this is great for sophomores and freshmen as well. So just like look back at that college list that you built and start engaging with your top schools or all of them on your list if you can. I recommend using the same email address that you plan to apply to that school later, so they can connect every activity that you do, every email that you click from them. They can connect that to your application when you eventually send it in. It really all links together in this really kind of like cool portal way. And that's the case at every college. So you can start interacting with them right now and they'll see that as soon as you send in. I mean, like they'll see it now, but then like it'll connect to your application later. So this means, engaging with them on social media. It means signing up for email notifications from them. I even recommend sending in 1 or 2 professional email questions to their admissions team so they can see that you're actively, you've been looking at their school for quite a while now. Just if you're like, I have no idea what to ask them, one idea is you can just ask them, can I have information about your honors programs? That's just an easy question that you could send in. And then above all, participate in virtual campus visits. If you're a junior, plan to do like 20 of these this month, just like knock out 20 of them. All of this activity shows demonstrated interest to the colleges, and colleges really like to see that you're responding to their email campaigns. So that means when you sign up for email notifications and they send you an email about, like, check out our quotes about how cool our dorms are. They'll send out an email like that. Just click on it. If there's a link in there, just click on it and they'll get that feedback attached to your email as well. So they can see like you're interested. You've been honed in on this college for a while. There's lots of demonstrated interest. All of that honestly can help with merit, scholarships, everything. Like if they can see that you're really engaged, it'll help you out in the long run. And of course, for seniors, you still have until May 1st or May 3rd to visit schools in person before you need to commit anywhere. And if you are doing virtual visits and you're a junior, you're going to have all year to attend schools that you get into. So I do highly recommend visiting in person when you can, but right now virtual visits is where it's at.
Definitely.
And then, if you're a current junior, you are likely wondering how this entire quarantine will affect your college admission cycle? And honestly, that's the most common question I hear from families and students is, how in the world do I continue building an activities resume for college when most extracurricular competitions and events have all been canceled? Like, what do I do? So my advice is that now is the time to explore ways to add activities to your resume that can be virtual, remote, or done from your home. So this is where maybe if you want a lot of ideas based on what your future major is, this is perfect for that, one-on-one session that we mentioned for the special. Like, this is where it's at. So just ideas from students that we've worked with has been, you can reach out to local nonprofits in your area to see if you can help them coordinate volunteers virtually, or if you can help them build a new website or a social media platform and manage it for them. This can be like an online internship, or you can actually seek out other online internships, which might just be sending emails to businesses that you really like. Or you can reach out to local news stations and offer to write a blog or an article from a student's perspective on like classes moving online and study tips for remote learning, things like that. Just ways you could get like published basically. So you could also try out a small fundraiser in your community to donate to a local hospital, and then get your local news station to cover the story they love, highlighting good deeds done by local students. But, you know, I know a student who also did a food drive in her community. She contacted a local food bank to see what items they were like really lacking. And then she used social media to organize deliveries, and she picked them up from her people in her community. These are all just ways that other students have built up their activities in creative ways. They're not just at home, reading or watching movies during this time. They're still building up their resumes for college, and they're just using this time not really like to their advantage, but they're showing they can be creative. They're showing they can take personal leadership, and colleges really respond to that. Just be careful that what you're adding doesn't look like you're just desperately filling your resume with just anything. In the end, colleges don't want cookie cutter applicants. They're just doing what every other person in their school is doing. Colleges want unique candidates with genuine interests. So, just like write down a list of everybody in your class and like all the activities that that they're doing, and do something different. Just be like, okay, well, they're all doing something. If we all applied to the same in-state schools, why would anyone give me a scholarship or accept me over everybody else in my class? So here's my pro tip, especially for kind of like this upcoming summer that you could do. If you still feel like your activities list is a little lacking and you feel like you want some creative ideas and you kind of have no idea where to start, well, number one, you can have a one-on-one session with us and we can give you some ideas based on what you already have on your resume. But also, you can examine each item on your resume that's already there and see if there's any opportunity to take things to the next level. So like if you've done Model UN since middle school and you're an absolute pro and you're the expert, and everybody at school who wants to join Model UN always comes to you for advice, you could self-publish a book on Amazon, or even kind of a guide that you can submit around to places, and you can do a self-published book on Amazon to like help new students who might want to join understand the basics and terminology, or like the to-dos or how to navigate their first conference. So then you would have an impressive new item on your resume, because publishing a book looks great, but also ties into something that you've also had on your resume. So it all clicks together and it all makes sense. So these are the type of things that really impress schools. And if you want ideas, that's one of those things that we would be happy to help you think of. These are just like, we just like threw tons and tons and tons of ideas at you, and we have more, but of course they would just kind of depend on what your interests are. So just reach out and we can for sure help you with more.
Perfect. And so I wanted to share an opportunity with you guys too, a great way for students, kind of no matter where they're located, because it's open to both domestic and international students. And something else about this research opportunity that's unique is it's open to kids of any age, really, that's in high school. So rising ninth graders are also eligible to apply. And let me tell you, someone who works with a lot of freshmen, it's hard to find research positions, research camps that take people that are 15, 14, maybe even 13 years old. So anyone is really eligible to apply. So this particular program is called Rising Researchers. It's an online research intensive class, and it's designed to provide kids with a introduction to the principles of scientific research. And so this one isn't just like you're going to be sitting in front of Zoom, like kind of statically learning. It's really hands-on, despite the fact that it is a virtual class. So before the class even begins, the students are mailed a lab kit, which includes a microscope, and through small group discussions, hands-on experience at homes, students are really going to dive into like the scientific world while learning from a leading scientist from the University of Massachusetts. And so the good news is too, many of these students who work in the Rising Researchers program, they go on to have their independent research published in scientific journals. Another huge bonus is you get 2 college credits from UMass as well. So this 4-week program, you really are getting some great experiences. So any of our students who are STEM-based, STEM-focused, can sign up for this program. We can send more information. We'll send more in the follow-up email. I'll also send the email where you can ask for more information, and we'll be sending the link out to them as well too. But it's just like a really great opportunity, I think, for students to get involved, to kind of get their first hands-on experience, because you don't have to have any prior research experience. You don't have to have been taken already biology or chemistry or anything like that. And something that we really do stress, taking an experience like this and leveraging it to then get published in a scientific journal. There's a lot of journals that are focused just on getting published in a scientific journal for high school students. I think we have a webinar coming up about this in the summer or sometime. So we're going to talk about it a lot later. But this is kind of just dipping our toes into the water. But if you wanted to spend your hour kind of talking about research programs, you would qualify for a lot of research programs. As you might know, if you're kind of looking for a research program, their applications have already closed, or like I said before, the age requirements or prior experience restrictions or things like that. Rising Researchers is a really great opportunity. And so I'll send more information in the follow-up email as well to everyone. But if you sign up by April 1st, you do get $200 off. So I'll send all that information to you. Just put in where did you hear about Rising Researchers on the application form, from the Moon Prep webinar, and we'll make sure to that they knock that price down for you. But yeah, I'll send that information to you guys. And if you have any questions, I'll send the email as well for you to follow up with them too.
And also, if you are already committed to a summer program right now and you're like, man, this one looks great, just know that this one specifically is designed to be late July through August, to the end of August. So it's specifically designed to kind of you could do this in addition to something that you signed up for in June very, very easily. So if you are in a STEM major or potential major and you want some research on your resume before applying to college, this is your program for sure. So reach out. We'll let you know all the details.
Perfect. That's a really good point. And it's in the evening too.
Yeah.
So if you do have daytime commitments, it's just, I think, Monday through Thursday or something like that. Small class sizes, really great opportunity for students to get some hands-on learning experience. And will be kind of perfect, as Michaela will talk about later, in the essays and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And also then you could also do an internship during the day and do these classes at night. It's perfect. So
definitely.
The Common App is something else that students can kind of work on to get out of the way before the summer, before their junior or their senior year. So if you're a sophomore or a junior, I have both my sophomores and juniors working on this right now. Actually, 2 of my freshmen I already have working on some of these things too. So, honestly, these are things you can start on right away. So, the Common App is kind of the last thing to mark off on your list. A lot of students kind of like don't really start working on this until summer, but you can definitely get started on it early and give yourself more time for essays during the summer. It's kind of the last thing, but it's also multi-layered. Students, really tend to look at college applications as singular, like they only have to complete the Common App essay. But for most students, if you're applying to say like 10 schools, these schools will not only require that big Common App personal statement essay, but there'll also be a supplemental essay or even 3 for each school. And this is where students really start to panic. They log into the Common App at the start of their senior year, like they've already started their senior year, and they suddenly see they have 20 essays ahead of them that they did not prepare for. And a lot of them are really specific essays too, which you can't reuse. Like, why did you choose to apply to this college? And so you can't reuse that if you're applying to both like UMass Amherst and Michigan State. You can't use the same one because they have different campuses, right? So really the question is like, how do we get ahead on these essays? Well, this is the reason why we do that college list first, because the schools on your list will determine how many essays you need to write. And so we need to think, think better, smarter, I don't know, whatever.
So,
not linearly,
smarter, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, there we go. That's exactly what we're doing. I could not think of that on the spot. You're amazing. So first, we're gonna work on the Common App activities list, which essentially asks you to list 10 activities with 150 characters total to describe them. So to do this, start a blank document that lists out in extensive detail everything you've accomplished, which AP courses you've taken, awards you've won that summer at coding camp, literally everything you've done since freshman year. Just write it all down. And then you're going to have all the information compiled to kind of like shorten down on that Common App activities section. And now that you have all your involvements laid out in front of your eyes and also kind of fresh in your memory, now you can start working on essays. So start out by writing a list of all the supplemental essays you plan to write, and then write a short outline on that same list. So like a Google Doc or just a blank Word doc is the best place for this. So start by writing out a short outline of which things in your resume you want to cover in each of those supplemental essays. Many of these prompts ask you things like, how did you choose your major? In which this is a perfect place, you can clearly talk about your volunteering experience at a local hospital, which led you toward medicine. Or they might ask you, talk about a time that you demonstrated leadership, which would be the perfect time to talk about your role on student council. So you can see how like the things on your resume will start to kind of like match up with the questions that are being asked, but you just need to kind of like write them all down so you know which topics are already going to be covered by these shorter supplemental essays. So after you have a solid list of which items on your resume that you will need to talk about in supplemental essays, now you can start brainstorming ideas and an outline for your Common App essay, so there's no overlap. So, just as a kind of a story time, every year we have, students sign up with Moon Prep and they're in their senior year. I think the latest I had students apply or sign up with Moon Prep was like October 10th, and they had a November 1st deadline. So every year we have students sign up and they're already in their senior year and they already have their personal statements done and they just want an edit over it before they submit it. But then they have to completely rewrite that personal statement essay because they used up all the subjects that they need to talk about in those more specific supplemental essays. So, just don't be like that. Just really think ahead, and then you can kind of create a roadmap to your personal statement. It'll kind of honestly help guide you to like what your personal statement you can cover in that. So it really just works out better that way. My last kind of suggestion is before you start writing your outline for your personal statement, I highly recommend starting to read sample personal statements first. So, when it comes to the personal statement itself, it's important to show your personality and be creative. So many students, especially if you're talking about maybe trying to write yours early and you're in junior year, so many students are not very skilled writers. You haven't had um, a lot of writing courses yet beyond your English classes, and a lot of essays read like an extended resume. Like, my name is Michaela, and for the past 2 years, I've taught piano lessons. You know, an essay that opens like that just isn't really thrilling and gripping. So now imagine reading, if you're an admissions counselor like I was, imagine reading 20 essays like that started like that last one, and then flipping the page to read an essay that starts like, when my fingertips touch ivory, I feel more at home than when I walk in my front door. That's a much more intriguing opening than like, hi, my name is Michaela, I like piano. This essay is really the only chance to show your personality. So let's see this in action in a shortened, like bullet point version of what was actually a real essay at one point, because it's just really hard to fit all 500 words in the screen. I won't make you sit here forever while I read all that, but I do have a shortened version that I can share with you of a really good essay. So I'll read it off for people that can't read. I know it's kind of small text, or it is on my end anyway. I taught myself to knit as a way to connect with my grandmother, as age kept her from attending all of my school plays. After she passed, I continued knitting for the memories it held. After knitting myself a new fall wardrobe, that's a little bit of humor there, I began knitting winter scarves and hats to donate during the holidays to my local homeless shelter, as well as knitting small bunnies and bears for a local foster home facility. I also hosted knitting classes in a variety of churches and nursing homes to connect with new knitting friends. And of course, in the real essay, a lot of this was extended out a little bit. But again, this is just like a little roadmap to like, here's how she's connecting the beginning and end. As I look forward to my college aspirations, I'm excited to pursue a major in education. I hope to continue finding new ways to connect with others, just as the simple act of knitting brought me closer to my grandmother in her last days. Okay, so let's talk just for a second about why this essay is effective. This was someone's personal statement, and she got into a bunch of like all of her top schools. But this essay is effective as a personal statement because you get to know her and her family in a few short words. And she honestly sounds like a good person, right? Like, this isn't some unattainable, amazing story of some escaping a war on a rowboat or something. Like, this is a normal girl next door, just like your average person that might be in class with you, that just did something worthwhile with a hobby. So, this, like, what's really great is that she's talking about things that she was involved in, but it's not like, I spent 40 hours a week doing this activity or this involvement. Like, she's tying it all in. It makes sense why she's doing things. And then she has kind of a gripping ending as well. By the end, you genuinely believe probably that she's going to be doing something great with her education, because she's obviously proven that she'll do a lot of good with very little resources. And then the last kind of trick is that her ending ties into her opening sentences, which is just kind of it's a method to leave the reader with a sense of satisfaction, like the story is closed, the story is done, and there's like a satisfactory ending. Mm-hmm. So this is an effective trick that I call the full circle approach. And it's just one of the reasons that makes this specific essay really approachable and really effective. So this is kind of a really good formula to follow when you're moving into thinking about the personal statement of your own, of writing up an outline.
Perfect. Yeah, and I just want to reiterate too something that Michaela said about kind of this being about the girl next door. As we're kind of working with our students right now, like our juniors, our soon to be seniors on their personal statements, a lot of them are kind of stressed. They'll look at example essays and they'll be like, I haven't done anything all that amazing, but it can be something super small. Like I've had students write about, their love of puzzles and like, talking about like that quest to always like solve something and how it bleeds into other aspects of their life, or about like a informal like cooking competition that them and their cousins would have. Little things that maybe showcase the character, I think is important to highlight here and to think about. It doesn't need to be groundbreaking, but this essay probably didn't happen overnight. It probably took a lot of different drafts, a lot of different versions, and so that's why it is important to start now, while you're not as stressed. You're not working on 60 plus other essays for all your other schools. Starting now is really important so that, you can have time to have your essay evolve and become, really beautifully written like this.
And I know a lot of students right now too are like, okay, even in that essay, this girl knitted bunnies and bears for a foster home facility. Like, I haven't done that. Okay, that's totally fine. If you're a junior, you've still got like 3 months of school of, your junior year left. You can do something like that right now. And then you have it done before summer, so just, that's, use that 1 hour session with us and we'll brainstorm something for you to do right now. Like, that's totally fine. Students are still adding to things to their resume over the summer before their senior year. So it's okay to still be doing something, adding it now or in the summer that you will write your personal statement about later. It's okay.
Perfect. All right.
Okay, so since you have some time at home right now, there's absolutely no reason why you can't be spending time working on things that will make college also affordable later. And one of those things you can do is kind of to start building up, a list of scholarships you can apply to during your senior year. And you can also start writing those essays in advance and getting some practice for when you're starting to write your college admissions essays too, because a lot of the essays are pretty similar when you're talking about scholarships and then college admissions essays. So the cool thing is that when we're looking at your senior year, first of all, there's also scholarships available for juniors. So if you start looking for some, if you're a sophomore, you can start looking at them to apply for your junior year and your senior year. I applied to like almost 30, I feel like maybe 25. I'm probably exaggerating. 25 scholarships in my junior year, in addition to the ones I applied for in my senior year. So there's ones out there for juniors too. I've even seen some out there available for middle school students. So like, no matter what grade you are, you can start looking for scholarships and start earning some money. And, when you're looking at your senior year of like, obviously that's when the most of them are due, but the deadlines are kind of spread out too. So I just don't want, if you're a current senior, there are a lot of scholarships that are due in March, April, and May. You can see the amount here is like 50%. There's a ton that are still due if you're a current senior. If you're a sophomore or a junior, you can make a list and just have all the essays ready to go and just start submitting applications. And there'll be a lot of them kind of due early fall, just like it shows on the screen here. And then there's kind of another chunk of them due around Christmas and first of the year, kind of following the same college application deadlines. You'll see that same pattern. There's a huge chunk of them that are due in the late spring. So when you've heard back from your schools and you're just kind of twiddling your thumbs, or waiting to hear back from schools, and, it's March like right now, and you're still waiting to hear back from some schools, start applying to scholarships because you already have some of the essays done. So why not, right? So let me kind of talk to you about how to find them and how to build a spreadsheet of scholarships. So searching for scholarships and adding them to a spreadsheet is absolutely something you can do just while you like binge watch a show. And you'll be surprised at how many you find once you start looking. And, if you want all of my tips on where to find all these external scholarships, you can find a recording of a full hour-long webinar just on searching for scholarships and like where to find them on our resources page, just moonprep.com/resources. There's a whole hour-long webinar right there. But essentially, where you can start is just looking at your school's website, and then you can also just make accounts on scholarships.com, fastweb.com, scholarshipowl.com, niche.com. Just literally search scholarships. Just search scholarships and start making accounts, and they'll give you a whole, like, here's a breakdown of ones that you qualify for. But what I want you to see is, like, here's what an example scholarship list looks like, because this is how you'll stay organized and you can see how easy it is to apply. So you can see this list ahead of you, like, this is what you'll start. And then when you've run across one that you like, that you think you can apply to, or that you've already written the essay for, if you're a current senior, like, I just sent a list that looks just like this to one of my current seniors. He's like super busy. He asked me to spend a couple hours and find a few scholarships for him, because he was super, super swamped. He added like 20 from his local area, and I helped him find some from his kind of the more national scholarships that I already had accounts at. And so there are just like a ton of different ones out there that he's a current senior, and he has like 40 to apply to now, and they're all tied to essays that he's already written for schools that he applied to. So like, all he has to do is just submit a bunch of essay or applications. So the important things here to see are just the fact that there's a deadline. It says like what essay you're going to use, and then like the link to apply. I do have a couple quick tips to share with you when you're looking at these national scholarships, because to be honest, there are a few fake awards out there. So what I recommend is just to make a new email address when applying to scholarships. So just kind of keeps all of your information separate. Just check it once a week and you're fine. And you can use this email address when you're creating accounts on FastWeb and other things. And then also I recommend going after scholarships that have like lower amounts of money, because most students are kind of avoiding those because they're not worth their time. But earning 10 $1,000 scholarships is better than getting rejected from a bunch of scholarships that only have $10,000 amounts to award. So I just recommend going for ones with smaller amounts because they have less competition, and also creating a new email address just to avoid any spam, basically. That's pretty much it.
Good tips. All right, so let's dive into a little bit about the changes this past cycle, because there were a ton. And even if you are, a younger student, sophomore, junior, or freshman, a lot of these changes will apply to you. The implications of some of these changes are definitely still kind of in the process. But here are kind of the three of the big ones. Definitely not the biggest ones, but here are some of them. And the first one, which might have come to a surprise to a lot of people, is just no SAT essay anymore, and no SAT subject tests. So SAT subject tests, were one of the official reasons why they got rid of this was they wanted to reduce demands on students. But I think it actually stressed out some of them a little bit more, just because it was a little sudden. A lot of students were struggling to find a testing center open due to the pandemic, because you take it really at the same time you can as the SAT test, the same location, same test dates a lot of the times. And so they figured by eliminating those SAT subject tests, it meant students didn't need to worry about preparing for yet another exam. And a lot of students were taking the AP, the advanced placement classes instead, or exams and classes instead. So they just wanted those to replace the SAT subject tests because they were becoming less popular. In previous admission cycles, some schools like MIT, I'm trying to think of any other schools that like required at least 2 subject tests. Some BSMD direct medical programs required, 1 or 2 subject tests. But they, like a lot of other universities, or actually all universities, dropped the requirement this year just kind of to make the admissions process more accessible. And so, like, especially like the California system, they removed the subject test too, and that kind of has led to the downfall of these SAT subject tests. And now, if you're in the U.S., you couldn't sign up even if you wanted to. They've been completely, shut down. No more SAT subject tests. So for our students, if you do have an SAT subject test, you might be wondering what you can do. At this time, of course, you can still submit your SAT subject test. How much weight they'll be given, I don't think anyone knows yet, just because not everyone was able to do it. It definitely won't hurt you if you submit, a really great score in a subject test, but it probably won't give as much weight just because not everyone had that same opportunity. And so likely each year, the importance of them will diminish. And then in a couple of years, it'll be completely no longer a factor at all for our freshmen who probably just didn't get the chance. And so our students, especially like our BSMD students, they would take, the biology or the math one, or chemistry, to kind of prove their skills in these subjects, just because it is such a rigorous program, or like a top tier program. They want to showcase, how much they've mastered this subject. Obviously, that's no longer possible. So instead, you can use AP exams to fill those gaps. If you can't, squeeze in an AP exam, trying to maybe self-study if you can might be an option. But ultimately, it's important to remember that grades, tests are an important part of the admissions process, but they're only one part of the admissions process. And as Michaela talked about at length, building that profile is still going to be really key. So if you can't take an AP exam, if you don't have an SAT subject test, ultimately, don't stress about it. Spend that time, building your resume, getting hands-on learning experiences, to build your interest, to showcase your mastery of a subject, in a different way. So it's okay if you weren't able to take it, essentially. Don't stress too much. Another thing that I'm going to talk at length about is also the test optional policies, and I have lots of data to show you guys, as well as just increased applications as a whole. So I'm going to switch to the next slide. So this was a 416 school sample that were a moderate to selective schools. And as you can see, kind of the different options that were available this year. Some schools require the SAT, a very few number, obviously just 3%. And some were test-free. Like, for example, University of Washington, they were both test optional and test blind. So you couldn't even submit it. Or you could submit it and it didn't matter what you submitted because they weren't going to look at it. But a lot of these test-free campuses didn't allow you to submit it at all. And there was different kind of pilot programs, either test optional, kind of a trial period, or a multi-year trial period. Or as you can kind of see here, 40% went test optional permanently. So I'm going to guess that test optional is here to stay, but we can kind of get some insight into the numbers here about what different schools kind of required, because it did vary from state to state. Like the California state system, they're completely test blind. But if you're applying in Florida, they did require the test still. And so that, added a lot of stress for students. So it's unclear how they're going to address it. At least I haven't read how they're going to address it in the upcoming years. But it was kind of a stressful time for students, and maybe some options were closed. We're hoping for the next upcoming cycle, because some schools were test optional for the school, but they weren't test optional for the merit scholarships, which means they weren't really test optional, because if you didn't take the test or you didn't submit the test, you might have been losing a lot of money on the table. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in upcoming years. I think a lot of them are kind of figuring that out as we speak, or, those discussions are still going on behind closed doors. But it was really kind of a tricky time, I think, for students. I'm trying to remember the universities. I didn't write it down, Michaela, and I should have. but Boston University, do you remember the other universities that accepted more students who submitted their schools? Let me see if I can look it up really quick.
Ooh.
No, I'm putting you on the spot.
No, I knew Boston. And
that's the only one I can remember. Okay, I found it. So kind of interesting information about it. But Boston University, UPenn, Emory, and University of Massachusetts, they accepted more with the SAT, ACT than without. It's hard to kind of judge based on that data point alone. Oh, what was that?
Oh, I said yeah. Sorry.
Hard to judge based on those data points alone because, we don't know if the students who are submitting just had, more well-rounded applications and students who weren't submitting. We don't know what the profiles looked like, if submitting it actually helped or if they were already just stronger in general. So it's hard to look at that one data point from 1 year and be like, that's clearly the answer of why they got in versus students that didn't, but it is kind of an interesting data point that at least some schools are submitting or accepting more students off the list than who submitted their scores than those who didn't. I think that we have to have more years before we can kind of decide on that.
That's a pattern I also saw with my own students. And the students that chose to do test optional just didn't have the same success as the students that still did this, that still found a way to do at least one SAT score.
Yeah. And I think that I might not be misremembering this, but University of Chicago, of course, has been test optional for a long time. And I believe that they kind of had similar trends where they did tend to accept more students who submitted their SAT scores than students who didn't. But then once again, the same question is why? Are they just stronger applicants? Hard to say, but that's kind of something to consider and think about, through this process. Some other interesting data points. It's just the sheer increase in the number of applications that were submitted. I can definitely attest to this. My students applied to a lot more schools than usual. So a lot more essays, a lot more work. And I think a lot more, at least for my students, it seems like they're getting put on the wait list. They're not being rejected full out. A lot of them have been put on the wait list rather than rejected, which is kind of an interesting, I think, trend for this year that schools are just trying to make sure that they do have a full freshman year class. So we're going to use the wait list a little bit more frequently. And you can kind of just see here the increase in applications. 42% more applications to Harvard University. It was already insanely difficult to get into Harvard, and now is that much harder. And we're kind of going to go over some numbers later on too. 24% more applications to Boston University. These numbers were kind of consistent across the board, especially at the top tier universities. This is really what we're seeing this cycle, and that 10% more Common App applications. More students are kind of shooting their shot at top tier universities and kind of going the test optional route too, in case they weren't able to get the score they wanted. And so here are some both BSMD and university-specific numbers. So, for example, you can see here some of these schools just had insanely small acceptance rates, and that's not to scare you off, of course, from applying, but just to so you're aware of the full numbers. So you are building a balanced college list, like what Michaela was talking about. Acceptance rate is really important to look at too, because some students might look at, for example, the Rice University BSMD program and be like, I'm meeting their qualifications, like my SAT score is above their average, my GPA is above their average, or what they recommend or something like that. So I should be a shoo-in, but with a 0.38% acceptance rate, no one is a shoo-in, no matter what your qualifications are. So that's just an important thing to remember, is an admit rate really does matter for the BSMD programs. And so you can see here too, Harvard had a 4.92% acceptance rate. Duke had a 7.7% acceptance rate. I think actually their acceptance rate did go up. They were one of the few, I think, that I read. I believe it was them. But across the board, most of these acceptance rates are quite challenging. So this is kind of just so you can see the numbers, see how students are applying, and why students are applying to more schools too, just because these numbers are a little daunting if you have your eyes on a top tier university.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that? What
Awesome.
you think, Michaela? Oh,
Nope, this is exactly why sometimes a little advice from us is always, helpful. So we're happy
yeah.
to look over your resume and your application and your GPA and just give you some advice over your college list or anything like that, point you in the right direction.
Yeah. A balanced college list, I think, is honestly half the battle.
Yes.
If you applied to you could apply to, 6 schools, 10 schools, but if their acceptance rate's 3%, 0.7%, what are your chances of getting in? Maybe not
Mhm.
that high. So it is important to have that balanced list, and we can definitely help you crunch those numbers and get that right answer for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, of course, we want to make sure that you have more resources, kind of offline, I guess, not really offline, but as after the call, we want you to be able to connect with us and also have the resources that you feel like you can use to be successful on your own. If you are really struggling with a way to brainstorm for your personal statement, we have an ebook for that. We have an ebook, we have webinars, recorded webinars on scholarships and financial aid, how to decipher your financial aid letter for current seniors that are receiving financial aid offers. We've got
Mhm.
a webinar on that. And we just want to make sure that you have all the resources that you need to kind of be successful. And of course, then we're here for additional advice should you need it. So please feel free to check out our free ebooks and our recorded webinars. And you're also welcome to join us for future webinars as well. We have a few coming up. And yeah, so we have a few coming up, especially in April, early April. We have summer planning in a COVID world, virtual ideas for high school students. So we're going to be going over even more ideas than what I shared here about just ways you can be building your resume while you're at home or virtual, just remote ideas for continuing to build your resume. And then, of course, we're doing one of our patented kind of ask me anything where we're just spending the entire hour answering any question you have over college admissions, medical school admissions, anything you need. And then we have kind of a more medical based webinar with what med school hopefuls need to do this summer. So it's a little bit more based on like what medical school hopefuls should be adding to their resume to be competitive applicants. So please join us for future webinars. We want to answer all your questions and continue connecting with you and giving you every bit of advice we possibly can provide. And of course, if you really liked our essay approach, that one that I shared with you, the brief version I shared with you, and you feel like your own scholarship essays or your personal statement essay might benefit from having us help you or help you outline it or anything like that, the good news is that we are here for you. We have that special we mentioned, or we have convenient hourly packages with no long-term commitments. And so please check us out or on our website, moonprep.com. And we are happy to connect with you and help you with anything that you need individually. If you want Moon Prep in your corner, if you want one of us to give you advice, individualized advice any time of the day, we would love to meet with you and help you with anything you need in your own personal admissions process. So as we begin our Q&A, I just wanted to leave you with our contact information and also the link to our free ebook, which also is already in the chat too, just to help you with essays. It'll be on the screen. And of course, we know that your time is valuable. So if you enjoyed this webinar, please let us know by leaving a review on Facebook. Anything else you wanted to add, Lindsey?
Nope. Yeah, if you leave us a review on Facebook, we'll send you like a little free giveaway. If you have some, constructive feedback for us, something you'd like to see, a topic you'd like us to cover in a future webinar, or a Forbes article, whatever it might be, you can email us as well. We'll give you a freebie for that too, the free giveaway. So let me put in the link for our Facebook reviews as well, but we would really appreciate it. And let us know if you have any questions too. I see that there is a question about where the ebook is. I'll put a link to it directly in the chat, but if you go to the moonprep.com/resources, you can also find it and a lot of other resources that Michaela was talking about before. A lot of information in there. We have about building a college list. All our webinars are on there, interview guides, lots of things that I can't even remember. We have a ton of stuff on there for you to really help you through that process, but I'll put the link in there as well. If you guys have any other questions, let us know, because we're more than happy to spend some time answering it too.
Yeah, we will stay on here as long as you all have questions. So
ask away. I'm going to put the link again to the webinar or the ebook.
Yeah, as far as ebooks, like the other ones I can remember are our LinkedIn guide.
I'm not sure if that's on our free resources. We have like an early high school checklist on there, building a strategic college list, a guide to the FAFSA.
Yes.
Yeah, the ultimate LinkedIn guide. You're right. And we actually just got a revamped version of that, so we should update that in there.
Yay.
And just like a lot of other things. So no matter where you are in the process, if you're a freshman, if you're a soon-to-be senior, even if you are a senior, a lot of resources on there too that you can dive into.
And we're going to be adding more this summer. I've got big plans. So
yeah.
I'm constantly thinking of ideas. So we'll be adding more stuff on there. So just bookmark that page and check back in a month, and there will likely be more ebooks on there.
Once we have time.
We're always adding to it, except when we're really busy.
Okay. Well, if you guys do think of any questions, you definitely do have our email. We'll shoot that out to you guys after this webinar. But it was really nice to talk to you guys all tonight, and we're looking forward to seeing you on our next webinar.